So we are here today for the fifth interview of our series. The series, the title is Free Thought from the Future. We have a pleasure here to have here Professor Phoebe Koundouri from Athens University of Economics and Business, and she's also president of the European Association of Environmental Resource Economists, among other important roles. So we start with our interview with the first question. The question is, how do you think the energy ecological transition will play out? Do you think that some element has been left out from the current framework and policies?
The transition to sustainability. The transition to sustainability for me is explicitly communicated in the UN Agenda 2030 and the 17 SDGs, the 169 goals within those SDGs, and of course, the commitment of 193 countries on these SDGs. It's a very holistic agenda. It's an agenda that integrates all needed transformations. For me, the transformations that need to take place in order for the transition, the sustainability transition to be achieved are first, a transformation in education, gender and inequality. Second, a transformation on health, well-being and demography. Third, a transformation on energy decarbonization and sustainable industry. Fourth, transformation that will concern the sustainable management of food, land, waters and oceans. Fifth, the transformation for sustainable cities and communities. And lastly, the digital transformation, digitalization for our sustainable development. These transformations include the full implementation of all the 17 SDGs and the 169 targets within them. Can we achieve it? Achievement means that we understand this complex, integrated, interdisciplinary framework, systemic framework, that we have policies that implement the framework, and we have the finances to support the implementation of the framework. If we look at Europe, I see a clever transposition of this framework in the European Green Deal, in the industrial policy of Europe, in the digital policy of Europe. And I find the EU Next Generation, which basically includes the recovery and resilience plans, quite consistent with these SDG transformations. And of course, the climate law, the EU taxonomy, the sustainability directive for companies, the Fit for 55, even EU Repower EU lately in 2022. And I also find that Europe has got it right in having a framework until 2050, because it is by then that this framework is achievable. So I would urge everybody to campaign for the SDGs of UN Agenda 2030 to be extended by 2050. So in Europe, we are able to achieve this, although some deep learning analysis that my team and I did on the effectiveness level of the European Green Deal on implementing the SDGs, we find that the European Green Deal is very good in implementing efficiently and successfully the transformation that is relevant to SDGs that have to do with sustainable food, land, water, and oceans, and energy decarbonization and sustainable industry. It is less efficient to implement sustainable cities and communities and digitalization, and is not doing a good work with regards to education, gender inequality, health, and well-being. Unfortunately, this means that the European Green Deal is not very efficient with regards to the SDGs that are relevant to the cohesion of the economy. And without cohesion, you cannot really engage stakeholders. And it is these stakeholders that are going to actually implement the transition. So this is a very critical issue, that the transition has to be just, inclusive, and engaging, and without that, it cannot happen. Now, with regards to the rest of the world, and we all know that unless the US, India, China, the global South are involved in this transition, the transition cannot happen. Even if Europe becomes fully climate neutral, biodiversity resilient, economically efficient, and socially supportive and engaging, the transition is a global mission. The problems are global, the externalities are global, so all countries need to be on board. So a big issue is how we engage the big polluters with regards to greenhouse gas emissions. The US, China, India. China has committed to 2060 climate neutrality, India 2070. US and China committed to having climate dialogues, and all this happened during the last COP26. And also we have 40 countries committed to climate neutrality. We have never had this momentum before, but we need more. And the big worry is what happens to the global South, how we provide the global South with the capacity, the knowledge and tools that there is, but also financial resources and innovation, acceleration that is needed, and innovation transmission that is needed in order to engage in this transition. So the problem of inequality, it's a big one. So let me close by saying, close this first reaction by saying that at the moment we are facing the pandemic as a crisis, the economic recession that is also having to deal with inflation and stagnation that pop out in 2022. I've been warning about inflation problems 2-3 years before. Nobody thought that this would be a problem. It's a real problem. Then we have the climate crisis, the biodiversity collapse, and of course we have the energy crisis that has been aggravated by the geopolitical crisis, the war in Ukraine, the food crisis, and all this in an era where inequality is increasing between the developed world and the global South, but also inequality within nations and income groups and geographical distributions. So many problems to be dealt with. We really need a very holistic agenda, and the only agenda that is that holistic is a UN Agenda 2030.
Okay, thank you very much for your first answer. So the second question is related to two words that are very common in environmental economics, that are mitigation and adaptation. Focusing on the fight against climate change, what is your opinion about mitigation versus adaptation strategies? Should there be a perfect balance between the two, or should we prioritize one of them?
Yes, Sergio, as you know, we economists work on both mitigation and adaptation, and they are both extremely important. I will start from climate adaptation. because climate adaptation is something that citizens understand very well. It affects them directly. They are now becoming more and more vulnerable to the increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather events. They are facing floods. They are facing heat waves. They are facing continuous forest fires. They are facing very big waves, tsunamis in the sea. They are facing sea level rise, especially citizens in small island states. And they are facing them now, and they need answers now, and they need protection now. So it is very important for nations and countries to be able to protect their citizens from these extreme weather events, from climate change effects today. So climate adaptation is very, very important. Each country, each nation, each region within a nation, each municipality, city and municipality within regions should be able, should be provided with capacity, scientific capacity, technological capacity, and financial capacity to devise their climate adaptation plans. And this is a combination, again, of early warning systems, of other infrastructural technologies, of increased education and awareness. And all of this is a complex mixture of technologies, investments, policies, and financial instruments to support all this. I am involved in the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, which is trying to help countries pave pathways for climate neutrality and climate resilience. We have launched the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Global Climate Hub on Wednesday, 6th of July at the Academy of Athens, together with Jeff Sachs. I will be chairing it. And the mission of this hub will be to help nations devise their pathways for climate neutrality and climate resilience. And this climate hub will have its headquarters in Greece under my institutions, the Athens University of Economics and Business, and Athena Research and Information Center on Information Technologies, Research and Innovation Center on Information Technologies. And one big part of what we are doing is, of course, climate mitigation. Early warning systems, infrastructural interventions, capacity awareness campaigns, education, training, upskilling, and reskilling. The other big part that we will be working on is, of course, mitigation, because we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it is important that we are at the stage, important and lucky that we are at the stage where technology is able to provide cost-effective answers. We are lucky that at this very critical point in time, technological development and its rapid pace during the fourth industrial revolution has made renewables, circular economy, nature-based solutions, digitalization, all of these are relevant to climate mitigation. They are now cost-effective compared to fossil fuels, compared to petrol, compared to lignite, compared to natural gas, and even compared to nuclear energy. So it is lucky that we have cost-efficient solutions. that are clean or almost clean. We need, of course, to optimize the pattern of adoption of the solutions, because in renewables, we have wind, offshore and onshore, we have solar, we have geothermal, we have alternative fuels that can be used. We have the projection of the possible contribution of hydrogen, and the growth strategy, at least of Europe, says explicitly that Europe has to become a hydrogen, or has to lay the foundations of a hydrogen economy by 2030. So it is important that we have cost-effective solutions that are clean, and this should really accelerate the process to climate mitigation. So what we need, again, and this is the other big part that the Global Climate Hub will be working on, the Global UN SDSN Climate Hub will be working on, identify the optimal mixture of technologies and financial instruments that will be supported by the optimal mixture of policies in order to accelerate the process of mitigation. So to cut a long story short, both mitigation and adaptation are very important. Mitigation is more at the global level, and there is where we need to think about optimal synergies between the developed world and the global south, and how we transfer the technology to the global south, how we create the infrastructure that can support this technology, how we can upskill and reskill the labor force in order to use this technology. And with regards to adaptation, it's more of a local idiosyncratic business. So again, we need national capacity to investigate and develop the effective and efficient systems, and also upskill and reskill the communities to be able to engage in adaptation and to be able to use the technologies that can help them protect themselves and their production and their consumption from climate events. So this is a double business that needs to happen simultaneously and in a very holistic and systems approach. You have to look at the energy system, the food and land system, the marine system, the mobility system, the economic system, the social system, the education system. So it's really a holistic, systemic approach that is needed. And let me close by saying nothing can happen unless the stakeholders understand what all this is about. And the stakeholders are not just the scientists and the technology developers. These are the people who need to create an interface with the rest of the stakeholders that are there to implement the solutions, the politicians, the policymakers, the financial institutions, the businesses, the NGOs, the civil society at large. This is exactly what we try to do at SDSN Global. We have engaged as members more than 1,600 institutions that try to engage the rest of these are research institutions, universities, and research institutions. And their mission is to try to communicate the solutions for sustainability to all these other stakeholders and leaders of these stakeholders in each and every country in the world in order to accelerate the transition. And we do a lot of this as EIT Climate Kick as well. We have just won a very big project, 30 million project, which focuses on creating climate resilient cities and focuses on 100 different regions in Europe. And this is not the only project that we have in the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on Aiphoria that I lead. We have 4 different research institutions which work on these issues, and 3 accelerators, the EIT Climate Kick, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, a knowledge and information community that accelerates innovations relevant to climate neutrality. We have an accelerator on maritime with 25 startups, and an accelerator on climate adaptation, which we call Brigade Connect, with 120 startups. So these 4 research institutions, one of them at the Athens University of Economics and Business, one of them at Athena Research and Innovation Center, one a private research institution, and a second one at the Athens University of Economics and Business dealing with stochastic modeling and application. All these, together with the 3 accelerators, at the moment have more than 500 million of research and innovation and demonstration and training money in order to accelerate this transition. And this cluster, this Alliance of Excellence, is actually the supporting interface of the UN SDSN Global Climate Hub. And we hope that we will have many more partners with resources and expertise in order to help each and every nation pave the pathways towards climate resilience and sustainability transition.
Okay, thank you for your answer. So even if you said that it's very important. So it's an holistic process. So you have to take into account all the goals combined. You have to move all at the same time together. Is also is important. So if I am able to summarize a little bit this point, maybe it's very important also goal 17, in which we are speaking about network and the manner in which you need all the stakeholders in order to enhance the sustainability of the world. So we are speaking about all this. One question is try to also to focus about which could be something more than the climate change as a topic issue, so an important issue. So in our case, for example, focus in general is climate change. Climate change is very important. One of the questions is which issues other than climate change could you prioritize on our future? So you answer also speaking about those inequalities or the exercise that we can try to do is if I have given that we have some budget constraint, so we have to invest some money in one direction. And so we have to decide in which direction is possible so to invest. So the first, in some cases, is climate change, because we know that could have an effect on all the system. If we have other direction, in which direction we can move?
So prioritizing which SDG is more urgent in each continent, in each nation is crucial. And basically this kind of prioritization is what will allow us to succeed. And because it is so important, every year under UNSDSN Europe that I co-chair, we publish a report on the joint implementation of the European Green Deal and the SDGs. This is a report that I lead with Professor Jeff Sachs, the president of UNSDSN. And basically what we do there is try to see in each country of Europe which are the SDGs that are performing less well, let me say, the underperforming SDGs, and find a way to identify how the money that is supporting the European Green Deal, in addition with the EU Next Generation, the RFF money, and the other money from Cohesion Fund, can be allocated between investments and ministries in order to support the SDGs that are underperforming in each nation. So if each nation can identify the Agenda 2030 as their investment program, and then they can see where they are doing well in terms of implementing the SDGs and where they are not. And every year, let me say that as UNSDSM, we publish a report for each and every of the 193 nations across the world that shows the performance of each of these countries with regards to each of the SDGs and each of the 169 targets. So each country knows where they stand according to the SDGs. They know where they have their soft points. And what we devised is an allocation tool that can help them allocate funds, resources, effort to the SDG areas that they are not doing well. If this exercise can be done by each and every country, then this will be very, very helpful. On a general level, if you ask me what are our most problems at the moment and where we should focus, it's all obviously the pandemic, the climate crisis, and the biodiversity collapse. With the biodiversity collapse being the most important of all the three, the most dangerous of all the three. But the global challenges integrate these three. Why? Because these three, together with the geopolitical instability and economic recession with inflation and probable stagflation, are aggravating the inequalities in the world. And it is inequalities that lead to deprivation, and it's this deprivation that leads to geopolitical instability. So I would say the biggest problem of all is the increasing inequalities within nations and between developed and countries and the global south. Is extremely dangerous for the welfare of people, for the possibility of wars. And of course, we should know that this inequality is not a problem in itself. It's a problem that its roots are within the pandemic crisis, the economic crisis, the climate change crisis, the biodiversity collapse, the population crisis, the energy crisis, the food crisis, and the geopolitical crisis. So saying inequality is the biggest problem of all is basically saying that all these causes that lead to inequality are the biggest problem of all. So we need to find a way to engage the global south in this effort of increasing welfare, well-being, education for all, no poverty, and food for all, security for all. And this is something that has to be done by careful collaboration between the G20, the G7. We need Africa Union in this governmental international forum. We cannot leave Africa outside this negotiation. These negotiations, it is very important that we find a way that our multilateral institutions can can provide the fiscal space to the global south to engage in this transition to sustainability. It is very important. And another very important element that is crucial is to understand that all the public money in the world, if all of this money have been invested on the SDG investment program, as I call it, they could not solve the problem. They could not bring an SDG-based world. We need more money than this. Our estimate of the deficit with regards to the implementation of the SDGs is about 10 to 13 trillion. So what do we need to do? We need to engage private money. We need public-private partnerships that make sense, that support people's welfare and security, and they are engaging, but also welcoming to all the layers of societies. So public-private partnerships that are clever enough to produce social cohesion and engagement towards sustainability, but at the same time produce profits for the private sector. And it is about time that the whole of the globe follows European leadership example with regards to transforming the business and the financial sector to an ESG, SDG-based one, where the profile of a company consists of the financial performance, but also of its footprint on the environment and on social cohesion. And if we manage to do this, and we manage to bring the private and public money into clever and welfare supporting synergies and partnerships, then everything is possible. Money exists, but it's not only public money.
Yeah. We need to strong effort from all the system, so public and private, in order to reach the goal. Also because the goal is very important for us. Okay, thank you. So I have other three short points, so quick point about thinking about this problem. One manner to think about the investment for the future is also thinking about investment on education. So in some research that we have written on from SDGs, it's possible to see that if you combine, so if you take into account all the targets, if you try to figure out which are the weights inside the targets of SDGs, in some cases it's possible also to see that probably education is the weight is very high of education, so could impact in all the goals in different manners. So we are still research on this, but is an interesting point to think about. Also thinking about that education today is a manner to invest for the long run, because the effect is not today, is not exactly in a short run, but it starts to begin in the short run, and there is also an investment for the future. What do you think about?
I totally agree, Sergio. I totally agree. If I had to pinpoint two most important SDGs, that would be education and then collaboration. So SDG 4 and SDG 17, because without education, you cannot make the transition. It's impossible. This is a science hectic, data hectic, technology hectic transition. It is a difficult transition. And what's more, it's a transition that we need to make in an impossibly short amount of time. I think this could be one of the biggest challenges the human race ever faced. So it is important to have the capacity and the engagement of each and every stakeholder group to be involved, to support, to be part of this transition. And the only way to do it is education. However, we should also be aware that we are really lacking, even the developed world is really lacking towards education that is relevant for SDG implementation. Why? Because if you look at our universities, or even before university education system, we work in the silos of disciplines. We don't have interdisciplinary culture. We don't have a strong culture of interface between science and the society. We don't have a very strong culture between science and technology development, and innovation is key. Some countries are very strong, China, India, the US, but we really need to work across the globe for this interface between science and technology development and innovation acceleration. And in addition to this, our education system infrastructure is also not SDG compatible. So education is crucial. Collaboration is crucial. In UNSDSN, we have a mission called 4.7. This is a mission in collaboration with UNESCO and Ban Ki-moon Institute for Sustainable Development and the Columbia Institute on Sustainable Development that tries to accelerate education at university level towards the SDGs. And our 4 main areas, and you can see them in the manual that we've produced, which is called starting with the SDGs in universities. The 4 main areas is transformation of the curricula to be SDG-based and interdisciplinary. Stop the silo work and find the efficient way to balance between specialization and interdisciplinarity need. Second, upgrade the infrastructure of universities so that they become climate neutral, biodiversity resilient, and SDG consistent. Fourth, create a solid outreach with the businesses, the financial sector, and the technology developers in order to accelerate massive deployment of innovation that is based on science-driven research. And fourth, a strong outreach with the civil society. All of these are not yet there in developed countries, let alone the global south. So we still need to work a lot on this. I agree that this is an investment that is crucial because, as you said, and I'm going to quote you this, it has short-term and medium effects, but it also allows us the transformation that we need in the medium and long run. And having estimated the possible effects of SDG compatibility, SDG 4 has, in the long run, the biggest possible footprint on the welfare of people. So education and the connection of education with technology development is our biggest hope, because it is a technological revolution, it's a science-driven and data-driven revolution, but we have to really use education in the correct way and massively deploy the needed transformation of education in order to be able to support the SDG transition.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. To conclude, the last is looking at the future. Okay, so 2 points. So I combine 2 questions. So the first is about technology. Technology is very important. Is a manner to have this energy transition. You have spoken about also learning curves in one of your answers. So is a reduction of costs in production, like for example, renewable resources is very useful in order to substitute renewable to conventional resources, to fossil fuel resources. And one question is looking at the future, 2 things. One is which could be the role, probably, I don't know, it's very important to know your opinion about the nuclear fusion, for example, because a new technology is a peculiar one. So we are investing a lot. Probably we'll have, if we have a success on this, probably will change completely which could be the structure of our energy system. And so, combined to this, that is more or less the same question, which could be your view of the future related to sustainability and the energy system. So the future of our children, which could be more green and more blue, so which could be, according to your opinion?
It is sure that hydrogen is, if we manage to have a technology that it will be cost effective, hydrogen will have a very small footprint, and it will be the supply will be infinite. The potential supply will be infinite. But for me, the sensible answer here, and it's always the case, is the optimal mixture of all technologies. So it's green, renewables, nature-based solutions are very important because they are important for the global south. And it is also interesting to see that countries with more biodiversity that is crucial for the whole of the world are the poorest countries in the world. And we have measured the value, the monetary value of this biodiversity and how we can use debt swaps to help them. So is this kind of solutions that are relevant to some of the countries in the global south. Then we have the green solutions, which are also very cost effective and with a low environmental footprint. And then we have the blue solutions. I mean, hydrogen could be the big tipping point by 2030. We have the digitalization, and digitalization has 2 phases. It can increase the negative footprint on environment, but with new material and new processes that are now being embedded, it can significantly reduce the footprint on the environment and increase open access and increase acceptability and social cohesion. So it's always the optimal combination, the optimal mixture of renewables. Circular economy has a huge role to play, and it has a role to play not just in big companies, but also in SMEs. And SMEs are the backbone of Europe, are the backbone of the global south, so they are important. Nature-based solutions, climate adaptation projects are important. Digitalization is important. Hydrogen is important. Alternative fuels are important. Alternative materials are important. So for each and every country, the optimal mixture is different. And we should pay attention to this optimal mixture. And we should pay attention, especially with regards to cost effectiveness and the optimal rotation subject to cost effectiveness together with within the country capacity. It is important for this transition and these new technologies to be deployed in a way that they create jobs and they create the necessary, the countries, the governments need to create the necessary ecosystem of upskilling and reskilling so that the people who lose their jobs in the fossil fuel industries, in the industries that are having a big negative footprint on ecosystems, the people that lose their jobs have the time and resources to upskill and reskill in order to support the new businesses, the renewables, the hydrogen, the nature-based solutions, the circular economy, the climate adaptation, the digitalization. It is really very important to have the social cohesion and just transition element on board. So optimal mixture of technologies, but at the same time, financial support and policy support for the just transition. And this support will come by clever, efficient public-private partnerships. No country, no continent has enough public money. We need the private money in, and we need to communicate with the private sector and the financial institutions the big opportunities, the big array, wealth of opportunities that are there for profit making and growth, which will create national growth and will create positive job multipliers and positive growth multipliers. And let me close by an optimistic note that COP26 was the best COP of my life, because it was the first time that I've seen the financial sector and the business sector really interested, really having a very acute interest in this transition. And this happened because the clean technologies, circular economy, renewables, hydrogen potential and all that have become cost effective, have become competitive to fossil fuel. And they started seeing the wealth of opportunities. So if businesses and financial institutions are on board, and if nations really have the political will not to just pledge for climate neutrality and biodiversity, resilience and equality, but also transpose these pledges into policies and implement the policies in collaboration with the private sector and in collaboration with other nations, then we have a hope. And this transition that is, as I argued, based on identifying for each nation the optimal pathways to achieving the interdisciplinary holistic mixture of the 17 SDGs, that is achieving the technological, policy and financial pathways. In this transition, the European Association of Environmental and Resource Economies has a very strong role to play, because this is the biggest, oldest, and most influential association of environmental and natural resource economies that can provide very insightful comments, solutions, instruments, tools that can inform the interaction between the technological, policy and financial pathways. And I believe that is not just our privilege that we can support the transition in this way with our research and our policy outreach, it is also our duty to do so. There is no other association that has such a wealth of knowledge and expertise to support this transition. And I think that we really need to invest on this policy outreach. And that is why, as a president, I support very strongly our policy outreach committee and also various different events and outlets that can really be used by policymakers, politicians, businesses, financial institutions to enable them, to provide them with capacity to become leaders in this transition. But as a president, I also support the initiative on a closer interface between us economists and technology developers, because it is important that technology is developed in a way that is cost efficient, and it is also knowledgeable with regards to its effect on social welfare. So we really think that we can help, and we are working towards making our outreach solid, robust, and useful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Phoebe, for your time. It was a pleasure and also an honor to have your answer to our questions. So we can conclude here with interview of Free Thought from the Future. Thank you very much, Phoebe.
It's always a pleasure to work with you and your institution, Sergio, and I'm really honored that you have the patience to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.